Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of Analysing Anfield, your tactics and analytics podcast, courtesy of the Blood Red channel. I'm Josh Williams, and I'm joined, as always, by David Hughes. Dave, how has your week been?
Yeah, not too bad, thank you, mate. Fairly uneventful in comparison to things that happened at Old Trafford on Sunday. But yeah, not too bad. How about you? How about you, Josh? I feel like we
I'm
don't
all
always
right.
ask you in return.
No, I'm always okay, mate, but the Old Trafford thing has put us in a bit of a weird position podcast-wise because the game we previewed last week obviously didn't end up happening. So, and this week, we do face Manchester United Thursday, not this Thursday, following Thursday, but we've previewed them. So we have a bit of a weird podcast going on today. So we're going to preview Southampton this weekend, but then to fill basically the second half of the show, we might be shorter today. We'll see, but to fill the second half of the show, we're going to do what we seem to do on a bit of an annual basis, really, and that is scouting picks. The two roles that me and Dave do in Reach are to do with, well, they were supposed to be to do with scouting picks anyway, and keeping an eye on players across Europe, providing transfer information and stuff like that. So today, because we've got that extra space, Dave's going to pick three players, and I'm going to pick three players, and they're not necessarily for Liverpool or Liverpool links. We will probably get to that when the season ends, I assume. Today, it's just going to be more a case of putting the spotlight on these six players, because we think they deserve some of the spotlight, and we want to flag that, there could be a potential move on the horizon, could be in the Premier League soon, and hopefully you will have heard about them first on Analysing Anfield. Last season we did this, I think I flagged maybe Martin Odegaard, can't remember who else I flagged. He's obviously now at Arsenal on loan. Dave flagged a few players, as well as a centre-back in the Polish 8th Division.
Yeah,
needless
to say,
to
yeah, he didn't get his big move there in the end, but I'm still pushing for him. Maybe I can remember his name.
Yeah, I'm going to say, I can't even remember his name.
Uh,
But yeah, we're just gonna do a bit of that this episode. And I should say as well, I haven't seen Dave's picks. Dave hasn't seen mine, so there's every chance that we could clash. Hopefully not, but yeah, we'll get to that side anyway. But first of all, Dave, in terms of Southampton, bit of a strange team, really. General thoughts on?
yeah, that to be honest, very strange. Obviously, early December I think they might have been top of the league, to be honest. Or they were in and around that picture, kind of top four after maybe 12, 13 games. Looked good. Everyone was kind of applauding them, especially because they had such tough moments last season, but stuck with Hazelhütten, which, by the way, I do think was the right decision. But then, yeah, just massively fell off a cliff since then. They went from, I'm looking at results now, from mid-January to mid-February, a run of about 6 games. There was 6 back-to-back defeats. Then there was a draw with Chelsea, and then another 2 losses. And it's basically been that vein since. Let's have a quick gander. Yeah, I mean, they've since mid-December, they've in away games anyway. They've won only one. I think Sheffield United are the team with the worst record in that time, the only team. So, yeah, very strange team. Just seems to fell off a cliff a little bit. Yeah, it's it's a bizarre one.
Yeah, from a Liverpool perspective, I feel, I'm not really exactly sure why, but I feel a little bit more encouraged by the prospect of this game compared to last season. Maybe I'm not really sure why. They feel like a bit of an open side, a really open team that you're gonna get shots against and you're gonna get chances against. And I feel like last season they were more kind of, you knew you were in for a battle and you were gonna get your feet stamped on and you were gonna have to be in for a scrap, that sort of thing. So I'm not exactly sure what's happened there. We'll maybe delve into it a little bit. What are your thoughts on Hasenhuttl? Because I like him. I think he's a good coach. But having said that, I do think I'm not sure he's reached the level at Southampton yet that I thought he might have. I thought he might have climbed a little bit higher. Where are they in the table at the minute?
So the 15th at the moment.
Yeah, see, I think on the Hasenhüttl I had them 10th and above, maybe, that as a guess of where they'd finish on a regular basis. But I think he struggled a little bit more than I expected with them.
Yeah, he seems to have issues in kind of stopping streaks. They seem to be a very streaky side where when confidence is high, he seems to be playing well and picking up big results. But when they're not, I don't know if this is, you can put this at the feet of the coach. I don't know, but they seem to struggle to kind of, stop the flow almost, stop the losses, hit the reset button, and turn a few of the defeats into draws, then back into the win column. They don't seem to do that, and I don't know if maybe you can put some of that on Hasenhüttl because of the way the system's quite kind of.
It's gonna be a struggle, that one, isn't
it? Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I don't know if you put some of that down to the way he's quite set on a specific philosophy and whether you've got the best players that always implement it. I don't know. You're probably better asking a Southampton fan who watches them week in, week out. But 15th isn't really a great position for them. They could still technically go down, by the way, but I doubt it based on the points difference with those in the bottom three. But they still need. They'd need a win this weekend, I think, to confirm safety. But with 4 games to go, still potentially in a position where you could be relegated. I think that's a really disappointing campaign, and a large part of last season really disappointing as well. So it would be interesting to see what the kind of Southampton hierarchy are thinking of the past 2 seasons and Hasenhüttl in general.
I mean, it remains to be seen how much the whole COVID thing has hit them, with them being a pressing side. And you mentioned there about they've got a bit of an identity, they've got a style of play and stuff. One of the things you associate with Southampton and with Hasenhüttl is pressing. But I looked at the pressing numbers recently, this week actually. Last season, for pressures in the final third, they finished second. Liverpool finished top. This season, Dave, not sure if you're aware, for the same metric, so pressures in the final third, they are currently 12th in the division. So they've went from second in the league to pressing in the attacking third of the pitch to 12th in a season. I'm not sure if that's a stylistic change that's intentional. Maybe he's now using a bit more of a mid-block sort of thing rather than pressing high. But it's definitely something that, if it's not intentional, I'd be a bit concerned about, because that's quite a drop.
Yeah, no, I didn't know that. I'd looked early in the season for the piece. I'm just bringing up the viz now. Yeah, I'd noticed that there was about a 16% drop on the PPDA average compared to last season. So I knew they were pressing less, but I didn't know it was kind of that much. And yeah, it's tough, isn't it? Is COVID a factor? Is it an adaptation to try and pick up better results, but moving away from your kind of philosophy? Is that actually having a negative impact rather than a positive one? It's tough to call from here, but overall, you have to say, looking from a wider perspective, it hasn't been positive for them, and they haven't looked great. I mean, it's tough, isn't it, when for me, they're the sides who were quite reliant on key individuals, without specific, like your Danny Ings, for example. Without him, they are substantially a weaker side. They've got like 3 key players, and Ings is regularly in and out of the side, and he's missed large parts of this season. He'll miss the game at Anfield as well, which obviously boosts for Liverpool. But when you're this kind of mid-table-ish side, and you've got 3 or 4 really good individuals, and you're missing a couple of them, then you do find that the quality of the side just dramatically drops, and maybe that's something else they've suffered with. Yeah.
I mean, a lot of the numbers, you kind of paint Hasenhüttl as a bit of a. I mean, he's associated with Klopp quite a lot. He's labelled as the Alpine Klopp, isn't he? But one thing I associate with Jurgen Klopp is attacking football, absolute attacking football all the time. And based on Southampton's numbers this season, they don't look like that. They look far from it, really. Just a little bit on that. So in terms of expected goals per match, excluding penalties, they're currently 16th in the league. So they've kind of got what you could label in a way as the 16th best attack in the league. In terms of scoring goals, again minus penalties, the 12th in the league. And in terms of shots, they are around 12th again. I think that might be 13th in the league for shots per 90. So, as I said, they're a bit of a strange team because it does feel like everyone knows their identity. It does feel like they have an identity, but specifically this season, it's not really there, I don't think. The pressings came off the attacking football in terms of generating shots at least and generating scoring opportunities and stuff using through expected goals. And, that's not particularly there. So it does feel like they're a bit of a vulnerable side, a little bit finding the way, still a little bit lost. You mentioned Danny Ings there. One of the reasons that they've been able to do fairly well this season is they've overperformed expected goals. Obviously, we mentioned a few weeks ago, Liverpool have really underperformed in that department. So Liverpool, for perspective, have scored 10.3 goals fewer than expectation. Southampton, by contrast, have scored 5.2 goals more than expectation. And much of that, without checking, I can check after I've spoke here, but I think much of that will be down to A, the finishing ability of Danny Ings compared to the average player, and B, probably their ability to deliver from set pieces. You've got James Ward-Prowse scoring free kicks. You've got James Ward-Prowse delivering corners into the box to the likes of Yannick Vestergaard, who's, I think he's like 6'6", isn't he, Dave? 6'7".
Yeah, he's a big guy.
Yeah, they've got avenues to goals. They've got avenues to putting the ball in the net. But in terms of, I suppose, their open play game, it's lacking a little bit.
Yeah. Well, even what sums it up was, and I just so happened to be looking at this last night, but what sums it up is Ward-Prowse is the Southampton's second highest league goal scorer this season with 8 goals, but only one of those 8 goals has come from open play. Which one? I mean, there's penalties in there as well, but there's a fair few free kicks. The split might be about maybe 4 free kicks, 3 penalties, something like that. But that kind of in itself gives you an indication, really, doesn't it? That they're quite dangerous from set pieces, but also quite reliant on them. And after, if you're beyond kind of Ward-Prowse and Danny Ings, there isn't really that. There isn't a lot there. There's maybe Che Adams. Che Adams tends to be a footballer who is a strange one, really. You wouldn't class him as a fantastic player, but he does kind of make things happen in the penalty area. Get goals or assist others. But yeah, that kind of captures why they might be overperforming the XG and just their issues in terms of creating from open play.
Yeah, I've just checked their overperformance, and Danny Ings and Ward-Prowse are the two main overperformers, really. Ward-Prowse has scored 3.2 goals more than expectation, and Danny Ings has scored 2.3 goals more than expectation. There's a few other overperformers by, 1 goal or so, but that's kind of neither here nor there, really. But one of the reasons that they've struggled despite overperforming is they've really underperformed in goal. So when it comes to the goalkeeping department, they are bottom of the league for underperformance. So they've conceded 7.2 goals more than expected. So 7.2 goals more than if they had a bang average keeper in goal, basically, which isn't great. Liverpool, for perspective, have actually overperformed in this department, largely thanks to Alisson, by 4.6 goals. So, that kind of thing can impact the season. And I think this is probably where it's best adding the caveat that despite Hasenhüttl being good, in my opinion at least. I do think this is a bit more of a case of you're only as good as your players. And I do think the Southampton squad's limited. You know, he's dealing with players who, to me, seem a bit lightweight. They seem not yet at the peak, or past the peak. They don't seem that mobile, really, compared to what you need to be a pressing team. So I do think generally Hasenhutl's approach is a little bit at odds with the quality of the players he's got, really.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just having a look at some of the appearances accumulated by some of these players, and Theo Walcott, who I think's being finished at the highest level for a little while now. He's played 18 times in that side. You talked about the goalkeeper situation. I think when a team or the manager's kind of chopping and changing each week in the goalkeeper department, which Southampton seems to be doing with McCarthy and Forster, that kind of gives you another indication that there's not that whole lot of trust in the number one position, which obviously has an impact on the rest of the side. So yeah, I'd be inclined to agree that as I say, I think they have some good players. We talked about Ings, talked about Ward-Prowse. I think Gineppo can have the potential to be a good player, though he's a little bit raw. So they do have Armstrong as well, but yeah, they're not a fantastic collective unit.
And I think saying that, it's probably a bit of a concern then, isn't it, really, that Minamino hasn't really pushed on.
Yeah.
He's gone on loan to a team that I suppose you could say don't have the best players, really. He came from Liverpool, and he's spent a fair amount of time of late on the bench, or not on the squad, I'm not sure. To the extent that I think Liverpool's loan manager contacted Southampton and was like, he's not playing. Is there a reason for this? Is this going to change? Sort of thing. And I must admit that I feel sorry for him, because I think he's it's going to sound a bit deep, this, but he's got his heart in the right place. I think he knows he's committed. He's clearly putting the effort in and stuff, but it's just for whatever reason in England not particularly working that well. He's played in midfield for them, played on the left, on the right, so he proved his versatility again. But just in terms of, I suppose, having enough of an impact to be demanding a starting place every week, he seems to be struggling, just as he did at Liverpool, really.
Yeah, and the thing is, Southampton should be a good fit for him. It should be a good environment to go and kind of establish yourself in England, shouldn't it? Because of everything we just said. Albeit, I guess the caveat is it's been a tough period for Southampton, really, since the turn of the year, and he obviously joined in January. And if your environment's not that great, it's really hard to excel, isn't it? So we can give him that as some form of excuse, but really, he's 26, coming into his prime. Okay, it's been hard for him to settle, but Southampton, on paper, should be a team that kind of play to his strengths. And yeah, I mean, I'm just looking now. He played. I think he started against Leicester, but against Tottenham, he was on the bench. On bench last few games before that. Yeah, he picked up an injury at the start of March, but it didn't keep him out long. He's not staying in the side, so it is a concern. And I'll be honest, I'd be very surprised now if Minamino goes on to have a career at Liverpool. I know it seems quite harsh to write him off after 18 months, but I just don't see how it's going to work out. I think he had to have a really good loan move and then kind of build upon that once he come back.
Yeah, it's been a weird one because I'm not really sure what you do with him, to be honest. It feels like Liverpool have just gradually started to accumulate a fair bit of. I'm not overly keen on the word, but I suppose deadwood is how you could put it. And it feels like Liverpool is getting to a point now where they need to start shifting some of these players on a permanent basis. Like, Harry Wilson's still at the club, only on loan. Obviously, Minamino is a player now that you might have to start exploring solutions to his time in England. But he won't be able to play against Liverpool this weekend anyway. He's unable to face his parent club, and I think this is, again, one of the reasons why Southampton haven't really been able to thrive this season. I mean, if you look at their injury table at the minute, arguably their three best players are currently out. So you've got Ryan Bertrand without a return date, Danny Ings again without a return date at the minute, and Oriol Romeu I think is out for the season. So they are struggling, and I don't think, as I said, I don't think these times, this period and stuff suits high energy pressing teams. It's we've seen City adapt this season to almost form a bit of a mid block without the ball at times, and it has changed things, and I think a lot of these pressing sides will be back to the best next season. But from a Liverpool perspective, I am going into this one feeling confident. In the past meetings with Southampton, I've been a little bit cautious because I do think they've been able to cause us issues, particularly at the back, and they still should cause us issues at the back because their whole pressing approach, which should be high up the field, doesn't bode well for the likes of Kabak and Phillips, for example, who aren't maybe as comfortable on the ball as Van Dijk and players like that. But I am going into this, Dave, with a bit of confidence from a Liverpool perspective. I think Klopp might go 4-2-3-1 here and just kind of have a bit of a basketball game.
Yeah, I fancy Liverpool heavily, to be honest, this weekend.
Yeah.
I know form's been a little bit off at times for Liverpool, we say that it could have been a little bit different. I'd held on in the last two games. 2 wins against Leeds and Newcastle. Things would, that would have been 5 wins on the trot in the league. That things would look a little bit different, but. A goal changes everything, doesn't it? Changes the kind of outlook. But on the whole, I just think Liverpool have too much. I think Southampton are really, really out of sorts. They have been for a long time. They haven't really got much to play for. I know I said they've still, if they win, they'll confirm safety, but I can't see them getting dragged in over these last few games of the season. And yeah, I think they're a little bit lost as a side. Plus, historically, they don't never seem to do well at Liverpool. I don't think they've scored in the last 4 visits to Anfield, so it's all that kind of might come into as well. But yeah, I think Liverpool have too much. I think tactically, I agree they probably may go with the 4-2-3-1, and I don't think on the break, Southampton will have enough of a clinical edge to kind of take the very few chances that will come their way.
Yeah, for Liverpool, I only see 2 major threats. And those 2 threats are, number 1, set pieces, and number 2, counter-pressing high up the field against the likes of Phillips and Kabak, and just kind of forcing them into a mistake and scoring from it, which is kind of Hasenhutl's game in a way. It's very similar to Klopp when he first came to England. Other than that, I can't see Liverpool encountering many issues, and I think in attack, as I said, I think he'll field all 4 of Mane, Salah, Jota, Firmino. I think he'll field a midfield too. I think Southampton usually go with a 4-4-2 themselves, so it'll be our midfield 2 up against their midfield 2, which, our midfield 2 on the day could be, Fabinho and Thiago, so I'd expect them to have too much for Ward-Prowse. And who usually partners Ward-Prowse of late? Is it Armstrong, or is he still on a wing?
Let's have a look now.
I know Armstrong usually is a wide player.
Yeah, but he has been coming in. Playing alongside Ward-Prowse, being put hell out wide, and then Minamino when he plays. Obviously, he can't play this weekend, of course. Don't know if that'll change things, but yeah, on the whole, you've been mainly having Armstrong and Ward-Prowse as like the midfield 2.
Yeah, in the last game, Armstrong was a midfield 2 with Ward-Prowse. That was against Leicester. Obviously, he got a man sent off very, very early, but that was their midfield 2, and that's both of them. Put it this way, both of those players are not centre mids, historically. They're I know Ward-Prowse has gradually retrained his game to be there, but certainly Armstrong isn't. And, if, against Liverpool should be able to exploit this team fairly well, I think so. Predictions on this one, Dave?
Yeah, I do fancy Liverpool. I fancy about a 3-0, to be honest. Because what I will say, I agree with your comments about the counter-pressing, but I also think if Liverpool take a lead, I don't think Southampton are in a position where they can kind of start pressuring with just like, sustained pressure on Liverpool and kind of, bombard and forcing into mistakes and grabbing goals that way. I don't think that's the kind of team. I just think stylistically it's set up nicely for a nice Liverpool win. So I'm going to go 3-0.
Yeah, I was thinking along those lines, to be honest. It's difficult to predict Liverpool's results this season, but I feel like it's much easier to predict performances. I feel like performances have generally been of a similar level, but results have just been all over the place, fluctuating for a number of reasons. But this game, in terms of how I see it playing out, at least, I don't think it'll be that different. It might be, but I don't think it'll be that different to the Newcastle game. Now, obviously, the Newcastle game, we ended up drawing 1-1 because of terrible finishing and what happened at the end of the game. But I think this will be similar. I think Liverpool will go with a similar side. I think it'll be about as open, end to end to an extent. And I think Liverpool will have plenty of firepower. And I think 3-0 is certainly possible. But when it comes to scouting picks, then Dave, it's been a while.
It has, yeah. I was a little bit concerned that I'd be a little bit rusty because I haven't done a ton of scouting pieces recently. Certainly not, kind of actual scouting as opposed to looking at players that have been linked with clubs. So, yeah, I mean, to be honest, I had an idea of kind of 3 players I wanted to flag anyway, so it wasn't too bad. But yeah, no, looking forward to it because ego-wise, it's nice to look back on players that you flag and see that they get a nice move, which happened on 2 of the 3 picks last time.
Yeah, I was going to say, to be honest, while I was looking for this one, for players to pick out this time around, I realised a few players that we have flagged before on this podcast who are still where they are, some of them. Like, I remember us talking about, I think it was this podcast, it might have been Analysing Everton, to be honest, but we talked about, do you remember Florian Grilisic, is he?
Yeah, Grilisic, yeah, Grilisic.
He's still at Southampton. He's still at Hoffenheim.
I was going to say, they are Southampton, right? Yeah.
He's still at Hoffenheim now, yeah, and, some players haven't progressed at all, some players have, and it's funny when you look back.
Yeah. I mean, it's still young though, isn't it? In the careers, it still might come that move. But yeah, interesting. So it's good. I think people enjoy them, don't they? It's something a little bit different to listen to.
Yeah, well, as I said, the United games give us this opportunity, so we might as well take it. Need to reaffirm that it's not strictly from a Liverpool perspective. Some of these players Liverpool might get linked with, we never know. But we also just want to flag players that, we just want to bring to your attention for whatever reason.
Yeah.
So I'll let you start, Dave.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm starting with Ridle Baku. I was just waiting there to see if you were going to be like the usual.
So far we're clean.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Yeah. I actually did write about this player a few weeks ago. So he's a right-sided attacker / right wing back at Wolfsburg. He joined this summer from Mainz. And yeah, he's only 23, and he started out with Mainz as more like a high energy kind of box to box midfielder. But he's adapted really well to playing like a right back / right wing back. He played there for Mainz last season, and returned a lot from a kind of goal scoring perspective, but direct goal contributions, so goals, assists, etc. And on the back of that, Wolfsburg swooped in for 8.5 million in the summer, and he's just been really good this year. As I said, what I like is because he's quite versatile. He's obviously played in midfield, but you can play as a right-sided attacker, or you can go in as a right wing back, which gives you options. His numbers have been really good. He's got 11 goal contributions this season, 5 second assists as well, or the pass before the pass, if you prefer it that way. But his general kind of profile is good. He's got a lot of pace. He's quite explosive. He just seems to bring a lot to that team. And although he's only been at Wolfsburg 1 year, for 8.5 million, I think you could envision a scenario where maybe a bigger side comes in soon, brings him on board, and doubles Wolfsburg's money. Gives them profit straight away. So although he hadn't been there long, they'll make really good money for him. Yeah, he's just a player I like. I think I was actually looking at him from an Everton perspective because Everton, I think, need to improve right back and right attack. And I think, you could kill two birds with one stone, bringing in a player like that who can do both and there's genuine output. So, yeah, he's a player, Ridle, Baku, that I think people should get on the radar.
Yeah, I actually think Wolfsburg will have taken the attention of many scouts this season, many football fans, whatever. I think they've had a good season. And their current coach, actually, I have tipped a little bit as a really, really outside shout for the Spurs job. Oliver Glasner.
Oh yeah, Glasner. Yeah.
But he's really intense pressing team. He's turned them into. I think when I looked at the pressing numbers recently, I think in the Bundesliga, I think Bayern were top for pressures in the attacking third of the pitch, followed by Wolfsburg, I think. And as a result, when I last checked, I think they were third in the league. I'm not sure where they are now. But when an outside team does that for a season, usually they get a bit of eyes on their squad, don't they, in terms of who you can pick off, who's doing the business for them, and yeah, that's a good shout. That.
Can I just say quickly? I'll let you go first, but I have actually got another name from Wolfsburg, so I think it was worth flagging that because it tied in nicely with the point you were trying to make. But yeah, sorry. Anyway.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's good because I haven't.
Okay.
So I'll go first. My first choice then. I'm gonna go with So I think we'll stay in the Bundesliga. My first choice.
Wise.
So I've gone with Florian Wirtz.
Oh, yeah.
You aware of him?
Yeah.
Yeah. He's by Leverkusen. And he actually turned 18 years old on just 3 days ago. So he's as young as they come, basically. But despite that, he's actually already accumulated over 2,000 minutes in the Bundesliga. So, in terms of establishing yourself as a teenager, he's right up there. And I'm not sure if he's had an international call-up yet in terms of the actual senior squad, but I think it's been rumoured and stuff. And like Baku, Dave, he is extremely versatile. He plays all over the pitch, basically, to the extent that I think at the minute, he doesn't really have a position. He doesn't really have a set position. He plays in the front line, on the left wing. He's played as a centre forward. He's played on the right wing. He's played as a centre midfielder on the left and the right. So he's a bit like, not as good, but he reminds me a bit of Havertz in that regard. Where Havertz was at Leverkusen himself and he was just kind of playing everywhere. That's kind of what Wirtz is doing. I picked up on him actually for the first time last season when I've just got a note there from our producer who says Wirtz got called up by Germany in March but didn't get a cap. Obviously didn't get any minutes, but the fact he's getting called up at 18 anyway to the German senior side captures his potential and stuff. But I picked up on him last season when the first football back after the pandemic was the Bundesliga. So I was watching a lot of Bundesliga football last season up until when the Premier League got kicked off again. And I watched a lot of Leverkusen, picked up on Havertz looked great. Wirtz was playing for them now. Edmund Sapsoba in defence looked really good at the time as well. But yeah, Wirtz just stood out to me because at the time he was playing in the front line. Now this season I think he's playing a little bit deeper. So far this season he's got four league goals and 6 assists to his name. And it's difficult to determine whether that's good or bad considering he's playing everywhere. So, it's just like a decent return, I suppose, for a player who's sometimes in midfield and sometimes in the attack. But yeah, he's a player that I thought I'd flag because maybe not anytime soon because I think he recently signed a 6-year deal at Leverkusen, understandably.
Time's on.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. But I think, in the future, I'd put it this way, I'd be intrigued to see what this player is like when he's 24, for example. And when you realise that he's got another 6 years of development before he reaches the age of 24. You know, he could be really, really good.
Yeah, no, it's a really good point you make. It ties in nicely with my next pick, actually.
Go on, do you want to go?
Yeah. So I've gone with a defender from Wolfsburg, Maxence Lacroix.
Okay.
As I can tell, I picked up the when I've heard him play, I've heard the commentary. So that's why I can do Lacroix. But yeah, that's pronounced for anyone to know. It's actually Maxence, and then it's spelled Lacroix. But you know, one of the key reasons I kind of flag him is because I've only actually watched him less than a handful of times. I think I've watched 2 Wolfsburg games this season, and I catch up on the highlight shows sometimes. But he always seems to play really well. He's just turned 21, Josh, and he joined from Sochaux in Ligue 2 last summer. So, you know, he's come from what is a second tier division in France. He's joined Wolfsburg in the Bundesliga, and I say he's just turned 21. So when he joined, he was 20, but he's gone on to basically establish himself as a regular within the defence, playing week in, week out. He's racked up over 30 appearances in the league this season, which in itself is a good sign, isn't it, Josh? Because it's basically, you know, it shows that a player is able to adapt and produce at that age. Then, you know, it looks like they're going to have a bright future. Really good size, good build. He's 6'3", you know, good kind of muscular build. Defensive numbers, certainly for defensive duels, look good. Win rate of 68% this year. It looks fair. He looks fairly unremarkable from an aerial point of view. Only 50% win rate in the air this year. But one thing that we've touched on a little bit doing this in the past is, you know, numbers aren't always everything, especially with defenders, because it just doesn't always capture, you know, how good they perform. Or it certainly has it misses a lot of key details of a good defender. So that's why I felt it was really important to point out how often he's played this year at his age, considering he's made the step up from a second tier in France to, you know, Germany's top tier, and playing week in, week out in a really good side. I don't know where Wolfsburg are at this moment, but I know they're certainly in the Champions League picture. So yeah, you know, I think given how he's adapted so far and his age, I think he's a player that might go on to play at a very high level, maybe get kind of picked by one of the top German sides, like a Munich or a Dortmund, and go from there.
Yeah, Wolfsburg currently third in the Bundesliga still. That's where they were last time I checked as well.
So that's good, isn't it? Really, to be performing in a team who were third in that division week in, week out.
Yeah, but an encouraging aspect of that though is, you know, what I've just mentioned before about the pressing approach of Wolfsburg. You know, the fact that they do press high up the pitch suggests that they're playing with quite an adventurous, you know, high line sort of thing. And some players just really struggle with a high line. So the fact that he's performing to such a level, despite defending 50 yards from goal the majority of the time, I assume, suggests that he's got translatable qualities really to a top side.
Yeah.
Just looking at the pressing numbers there. So attacking third of the pitch. Yeah, Wolfsburg still second in the Bundesliga, behind only Bayern, ahead of Leipzig for presses in the final third. So definitely adventurous side, definitely a high risk side. So I think that probably benefit the lad in terms of who he can move to and stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna go to the Dutch Eredivisie.
Go on.
To AZ Alkmaar.
Oh no, well, yeah, we're all right. Yeah, we're okay.
We're all right.
I haven't got AZ players. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going with, and bear with me with the pronunciation on this one, but I'm going with Teun Koopmeiners.
Oh yeah, I know.
Yeah, looks like a very good player. He's left-footed, still only aged 23, so he's approaching what you would expect to be a peak. And obviously, despite him being 23, he's still at AZ. So, AZ, not the biggest European club. I don't think I'm giving him any disrespect saying that. No. So
we won't have them in the comments.
There'll be an AZ fan watching this, and trust me, on YouTube there'll be someone.
He's captain, isn't he, as well?
I think he is, yeah, and he seems to have quite a bit of authority over that team because he takes pens as well. And I should probably throw in now he's a midfielder, so he's not a forward. He's over 6 foot, so he's got a big, decent size on him for a midfielder. But despite his size, he's fairly mobile as well. But his passing is probably his biggest trait. I think he's developing a bit of a reputation for his passing range. So I suppose he's typically Dutch in that regard. I think you'd probably expect him to be playing for Ajax, to be honest. Only contracted until 2023, so the whole 2-year countdown before the end of his deal will commence this summer, which is usually when maybe a player starts getting linked with a move. He's never injured at all. His last absence, I think, was in 2017, and he was ill for 3 days. So, always available. And despite the fact that he's a centre mid, he scores fairly frequently. Obviously, he takes penalties, but with the penalties this season, he has scored 15 goals. But without the penalties, he scored 8. But 8 is still a fair return for the centre mid.
2 right
yeah. And when it comes to his assists, he's currently on 5. So 8 goals and 5 assists for the centre mid, who's kind of dictating play quite a bit. Good size, good age. He's just probably getting to that point now where he's too good and maybe got a bit too much authority to be still playing for AZ, particularly throughout his peak, which admittedly hasn't arrived yet. But it's going to come obviously, and when that does, I'd expect him to be in certainly a big 5 European league. But I thought he was definitely worth flagging because he's got the physical build and that technical ability to play in the Premier League, I think. I'm not sure how high up in the Premier League. I think top 6 could be a stretch. But I'm just thinking of him for maybe like a team like Brighton, Leicester. Just a team wanting to play good stuff, but wanting to kind of make a step up, and as a result, taking a few risks on some transfers. I think he's a player that could do a job in England, so it'll be interesting to see if he moves sometime soon, but perhaps even this summer.
It would be a good, ironically, because I know Guy will be listening, our producer. He wouldn't be a bad move for Arsenal, if you do Conference League, he could obviously make that step up, because the way, obviously, the philosophy Arteta has, that'd be an interesting one. That.
Well, that's why I flagged Leicester and Brighton. They come across as well as 2 teams, I suppose, wanting to play very much with the ball and that whole progressive game and stuff. So, yeah, I think he certainly fits a few teams in the Premier League now. It'd be interesting to see if he gets any moves.
Yeah, so this felt like a little bit of a cop-out, this last one, but it wasn't intentional. I just think it's quite relevant, and I if you ask me, do I believe that this player will get a move? I do. Yeah, all right, Guy. It's not an Arsenal podcast. Our producer's just flagging that Ceballos is moving back to Madrid. I.e., there'll be a spot for them. But yeah. Anyway, yeah, I'm going to go with someone who's been linked actually a lot with Liverpool, Donyell Malen.
I was going to flag him. Good job.
Yeah. It was a little bit awkward, that one, but yeah, I just think there's already been some links, and some Liverpool fans listening or watching will be aware of him already. But I do think there's going to be a move on the horizon, similar to what happened with Bergwijn going to Spurs. He was kind of putting up these kind of similar numbers, similar profile, and he got his big move. But yeah, just those who don't know, Malen obviously actually was at Arsenal originally, and then he it didn't quite work out, or he didn't get his opportunities. I'm not 100% sure on that, but he went and joined PSV, and he is Dutch, so that kind of makes sense, going back to his home country for 5.5 million. And yeah, he's been steadily kind of one of the better performers in the division. Actually, you know what? I'm not 100% sure. He's still quite young. I'm sure he's under 23.
22.
22, yeah. So he's still a really good age. But this season, he scored 24 goals and 7 assists in the Eredivisie and Europa League. So that's combined. So, you're looking at contributions over 30 goals across the campaign, which is really good. Also, nice to see that in Europe as well, because although I don't know specifically who the goals came against, you'd like to think the competition's a little bit stiffer on the European stage. So if he's contributing there, that's a good sign. Those 24 goals were off an XG of roughly 23. So on the surface, at least, it looks like kind of a sustainable return. He's getting himself in good positions and converting at a good rate. Really good dribbler, plays centre forward or on the wide areas, predominantly left. But that's good, because that means you can use him in different positions depending on the team's needs. And another key point, and something that we've already spoke about with other players, but obviously in Roger Schmidt's kind of philosophy with PSV, they've been this kind of pressing side, one of the more aggressive pressing sides in the division, and obviously he's doing that from the front. And we know most top sides now, think of Liverpool, City, Bayern Munich, anyone, the kind of elite of elite. Pressing is a huge thing within their game, and it's a big requirement on forwards. And for him to already have been well drilled in that aspect of things, it sets him in good stead. He's got the right profile to go and make that next step up. He's delivered at this level now for a while. He's had a really good campaign. He's had good kind of training in these other aspects, like pressing without the ball. It's just that same old question now with players coming from leagues like the Eredivisie. Can he translate those skills into the tougher environment of like a Premier League or Bundesliga? But you never really answer that, do you, Josh, until the move's being made.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you flagged him, to be honest, because he's clearly a big talent. Of the 17 goals he scored this season in the Eredivisie, all 17 have been, open play type goals. Not a single penalty in there. And in terms of his shooting as well, he shoots an awful lot. He shoots over 4 times a match, and that's been the case this season and last season. And for a bit of perspective on that, 4 shots per match would be top of the Premier League this season. I think Kane's currently top of the Premier League for shots per match on about 3.6, maybe, something like that. So Malen obviously gets himself into shooting opportunities fair way, not afraid to let fly. And I can see him moving soon, to be honest. It feels like he's following the path a little bit of Hirving Lozano, who was at the club previously before moving to, I think it was Napoli. I'm not sure he's hit the ground running at Napoli that much, but
I think it started bad, but it's not. It's got steadily better. At least last time I checked it, things had improved slightly for them.
Yeah, one thing with Malen, I'm pretty sure his agent is Raiola, I think, which just always seems to be a caveat that makes a deal feel trickier. I'm not sure if it actually does in actual real life, but the fact Raiola is an agent of a certain player just always feels like the deal could be a bit more difficult, to be honest. But yeah, he's an interesting player anyway. He could certainly get a move to England, and I do think this is one of the players that were flagged that Liverpool could have an interest in, to be honest.
Yeah, definitely.
So my last pick is, I feel like mine's a bit of a cop out as well, because my player has just got his move.
Oh, go on.
So again, bear with me with the pronunciation of this one. This is a great name, this. So Josko Gvardiol, not Guardiola. Josko Gvardiol, centre back, contracted, or well, he is. Yeah, he's contracted to Dynamo Zagreb centre half, and the reason he feels a bit of a cop out is because he has already agreed to join RB Leipzig in the summer. Seems to be the replacement for David Pamecano and potentially Ibrahima Konate. But obviously we know about the ability of Leipzig scouting network. You know, it's they tend to unearth gems before anyone else does and all that sort of stuff. And this is a player that I came across and then afterwards realised that Leipzig have snapped him up. But he looks like a good player, good talent. He's capable as a centre back or as a left back, and obviously that ties in with the fact that he's left footed, which is always a nice thing for a centre half. That seems to be a bit of a valuable trait all the time, doesn't it? Really, if a player in centre back uses his left foot as opposed to his right, and the fact that he's played minutes at centre back and at left back, just watching him, in addition to those things, it feels like he's suited to a back three. You know, if he was to play in the left of a back three, it feels like he'd be decent. Still only 19 years old. So, you know, he's coming to a Big Five European League, age 19 there, from Zagreb, as I said, who I think they've unearthed quite a few gems of late. No, I think last time, Dave, you might have flagged Dani Olmo, and I think he was at Zagreb, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was. It was Zagreb or very similar. I don't mean any disrespect for the teams, but it's just, you know, it's hard to remember exactly which one it was. It was Zagreb. Yeah, he done really well there as well. You know, it does kind of seem to be a place where you can go and improve yourself, and then get that kind of, it's a step on the ladder to the next stage. I think what's interesting, Josh, I don't know if because I just a flag, I wasn't aware of him. He's new to my radar. He wasn't on my radar at all. But I've just had a look, and I think what's actually happened is, I think Leipzig signed him in the summer, but then sent him back on loan for the year. But the reason I'm flagging that is because that kind of reaffirms our point that, you know, it clearly the clubs like Leipzig, who have these extensive scouting networks, really good at it, value teams like Zagreb to, you know, rear these players and do well with it. It seems like it's a bit of a hotbed for players.
Exactly, yeah. You know, it's a way of getting cheap talent, really, isn't it? From these, I suppose, obscure leagues. But yeah, you know, this Gvardiol looks decent. He's good on the ball, good size and presence. I think he's about 6'1", but obviously the fact that he's 19, he's I suppose he's still technically growing. But yeah, just considering what the Bundesliga is like, Leipzig's ability to develop talent, the fact that he's 19, moving there, and who he could be replacing, left-footed. You know, he just looks like a player who could be really valuable in a couple of years. And given Liverpool's tendency to pick up Red Bull players because of the similar playing styles, he could be one that we end up flagging in 4 years or so, because Liverpool have been linked with him or something. So, you know, he just looks interesting. He looks like a good player, and I liked his name as well. So,
yeah, I'm not even trying to pronounce that. Like, I'm glad you did.
Yeah, but we'll leave it there anyway. I think we could have elaborated further on a few other names. To be honest, there was a number of others that I wanted to address, but we'll see how the rest of the season goes. If the summer's very, very quiet, we could do another one of these. You know, let us know in the comments maybe if you like hearing about these players that we're flagging. It does mix it up a little bit, doesn't it, Dave?
Yeah, definitely. That's it. You know, it's especially when, okay, look, we know from Liverpool's perspective, Champions League qualification is still a really important thing. But you know, beyond that, either side of that, the season's kind of petering out a little bit, isn't it? There's not a lot going on. You know, certainly compared to the last 3 years where Liverpool have been in finals and pushing for Premier League titles. So yeah, it's better to kind of delve into stuff like this than just, you know, talk about things that maybe people aren't that interested in.
Yeah, that's it. So, you know, at the end of the season, maybe, or, you know, in the coming weeks, you know, we'll see. But we could address a few more of these, see how it goes. But yeah, thanks for joining us, Dave, anyway.
Yeah, thank you, mate. Cheers, everyone.
and we'll be back next week to. I'm not sure exactly when we'll be back because we play Man United on a Thursday, so it's a bit tricky, that one. And then on the weekend, I think we've got West Brom. So yeah, we will see on that one, but we'll be back at some point next week. So be sure to tune in. Cheers.